I'm buying and holding it. I think the market's wrong. I just think it's completely wrong and irrational.
Warning. The political trade features probabilities and perspectives about politicians, political parties, political outcomes, and political wagering. The political trade is rated NSFP, not safe for partisans.
The number one biggest game is when they gain number fame. It's like a race at the top because they wanna be boss. They don't care who they step on as long as they get along. Politicians in my eyes.
Welcome back to The Political Trade, the podcast for people with a passion for politics, probability, and profits. I'm Jeff Joseph, editorial director of Luckbox magazine, hosting the podcast where conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats, partisans and wingnuts converge to make money betting on politics by trading in the prediction markets at PredictIt.org, the stock market for politics that trades 24/7. In our last episode, Mike Reddy shared some numbers on our growing global audience. So in this episode, we thought we would share some global perspective. We have a British super trader joining us today. Professional sports and political gambler Paul Krishnamurty is joining us from the UK. Up ahead, Paul will share one of his most effective trading tactics and the 5 specific trades he is wagering on in political prediction markets today. So to get the most out of this podcast, open up PredictIt.org, click on the Markets tab, which is in the top left, follow along, and leave your political ideologies at the door. As always, I'm joined by Mike Reddy. Mike is an editor at Luckbox magazine, a new prediction market trader, and the producer of The Political Trade. Mike, what does our audience look like across the pond?
Well, Jeff, believe it or not, the UK actually holds our second largest audience of any country, and it even surpasses Canada. A majority hail from England, specifically the Greater London area. That's where the bulk of our UK listeners come from, but the East Midlands has a pretty fair share of listeners as well.
Oh, that's terrific. I know we have it's interesting that the UK audience actually exceeds our Canadian audience. So it's great we're having Paul on. I ran across Paul, became familiar with him first by reading his blog over at politicalgambler.com. And I thought his perspective on US politics was interesting, particularly coming from from a UK perspective. I know you've also been looking, Mike, at the trades of our recent guests, some of their recommendations. I know you're constantly looking back and tracking how those are going. And what can you tell us? Anything standing out?
Sure. Well, some past guests have had some really lucky predictions. For instance, Will from the Hard Factor team favored famously Michelle Obama for the Democratic VP.
He did.
At the time, she was trading at about 2 cents. Now, that was in episode 9, but today she's trading at about 6. So we know at least Will has tripled his money. Notably, her price jumped after news reports quoted Biden saying of Obama, quote, "I'd take her in a heartbeat," for his VP. Also, in episode 7, Anthony Scaramucci said Elizabeth Warren would be Biden's best VP pick. He said she would appeal to the more liberal Democrats, which is where Biden might have a little bit of trouble. Now, at the time, she was trading at about 10, 11 cents in the VP market, but recently she hit 15. And, well, she's still up, trading at about 13 cents today.
Worthy of note, and we'll certainly ask Paul his thoughts on the VP market. I understand he's going to use that market to illustrate the tactic that he's going to be sharing with us. So let's bring him on. Paul is a professional gambler and a freelance political analyst. And you can read his stories, as I mentioned, at politicalgambler.com. He's over somewhere in the UK. Let's bring him on. Paul, are you with us?
I am. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. And yeah, thank you for joining us. And as I said, we were attracted by some of your writings over at politicalgambler.com. And after we got to speak and get to know each other, your story became even more interesting. You've been a professional political gambler and an analyst at Betfair as well, depending on gambling for your income for the last 17 years, right?
That's right. Yeah, I bet on politics and sports. I have 4 markets, bet on golf, cricket, politics and snooker, which is an English sport that you may, or listeners may be aware of.
So snooker is the billiards with the white and the red balls, basically, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a lot of snooker in the U.S. We don't get to see that game too often. But is that a vibrant betting market, snooker?
It's a very vibrant betting market. Yeah, it's big here, and it's also very big in the Far East, China particularly.
Of those 4 markets in golf and cricket, snooker, and politics, how do you divide your time, attention, and your dollars to those markets?
It's varied over the past 17 years, obviously depending on how much is on. I mean, cricket is on most days, so cricket is the lion's share of it. I would say probably 60-70% of my trading is on cricket. But then you'll get, in a year like this with politics might be 20-30% this year, whereas in other years it might only be 5%. But certainly a US election year, it'd be very big.
Well, what I find very interesting is the evolution of political wagering in the UK, and you also work as a contributing analyst to Betfair. So, what can you tell us about Betfair's platform and the amount of traction that political wagering, particularly on U.S. outcomes, U.S. politics, has in the UK?
Well, it's really grown huge in recent years. So Britain was really the home of political betting. It started here. And Betfair was the first peer-to-peer betting exchange. It was founded in 2001. When that was founded, political betting took off dramatically. I mean, the first American election I ever considered from a gambling perspective was 2004. And it was a big market, but I didn't actually have a bet, just watched it. 2008, 2012, I played it heavily and won. But really, the game's taken off in 2016. Firstly, with Brexit, that was the biggest market ever at the time in Betfair's history. And then Trump and Clinton went one better. So the Trump-Clinton election is the biggest single betting market we've ever had on Betfair. Well, there was 200 million traded on that market alone.
That's extraordinary, particularly when you consider the interest in the World Cup that you would have throughout Europe. So, and you speaking in pounds or dollars? 2 million.
That's in pounds. Yes, there was 200 million on the main market and 250 million across all of the various side markets as well, including it all. And it's bigger this time around. I mean, at this stage of the election, the 3 times as much is being traded.
Against the prior general election? 3 times more trading volume?
Compared to 2016, yeah, it's 3 times as much. I mean, just during April, £280,000 per day is being traded.
Jesus, 350,000, so that's about $1 million in U.S. money every 3 days is traded on what, the 2 primary markets, the Democratic VP and the presidential election?
No, it would be most of it would be the presidential market and the main Democrat nominee. So I think there's been 26.5 million traded so far on the next president and 22.5 million on the Democrat nominee.
And I know you're familiar with the PredictIt platform. What's happened with PredictIt, which has really grown significantly over the recent years, and particularly that same type of growth that you just alluded to on Betfair, about 3 times more than the trading volume of the previous general election. That's about what PredictIt is saying. In fact, we had the CEO of Aristotle, the firm that provides the engine to PredictIt, was a recent guest on our show, and he shared similar numbers in terms of the growth in political wagering. What is interesting about the U.S. markets is that an entire ecosystem has grown of traders, a community of active, whether they consider themselves traders or investors or gamblers. There's a lot of support. There are blogs, there are podcasts, there are resources that assist these traders. Are you seeing the same there? Is there a sense of community among political wagerers in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it crosses over, I think, to a large extent with the wider gambling community. I mean, I personally find that because, I was already known as a golf tipster, a cricket tipster, etc. But there certainly there's another big site here called politicalbetting.com that is much older than mine. Again, there's quite a community around that.
Well, I know you've put some big dollars down there, not to get into your income, but again, you make a living gambling, and you did speak to an 8,000 pound bet that you had on a snooker tournament. But you were also forthcoming in sharing that you lost $15,000 on Trump. Was that during the last general election? And was that a single bet outcome?
Well, so I spent most of 2016 in America, visiting the primary states, going to swing suburbs, just generally having a great time. Like, it was an adventure, really. And I had the most beautiful book. In both, I made money on the Republican nomination. I nearly made life-changing amounts on Ted Cruz. if there'd been a broken convention, I can't even imagine how much I would have won. It was like six figures plus, but that didn't happen. But I still made some money. And then I went into election night with basically Clinton wins me £25,000, dollars. Trump loses me $28,000. So I could have taken about 10,000 out of it. And I just got greedy. And then fortunately, at least during that mad short window when the results just turned on their head, I managed to cut my losses to 15, but it was a disaster.
It fell apart so quickly on election night, so being able to recover anything was extraordinary. So if you predicted traders are scratching your head about these numbers, that's because it's worth noting that the same restrictions that occur in the US on the amount you can bet in under any underlying contract within a predicted market, which is capped at $850. Those restrictions don't exist for you, do they?
No, not at all.
So your only limitation on the size of your bet is what the underlying market looks like, what the order book is, or if there's somebody to take the other side of it?
That's right. I mean, if you went on right now, you could probably get £25,000 matched on Trump at the correct odds immediately within 1 minute, 2 minutes.
And is there any spread between the bid and the ask pricing?
No, not on the main market on Betfair. The odds would be when I looked half an hour ago, it was 2.04, so that would be sort of 49.5 to 2.06, so 49.5 to 49.6, basically.
Wow, very, very tight spread. So Betfair, how do they make their money then?
They charge a 5% commission on profits on that market. If you win £1,000 on that market, they will take £50 in commission.
And it's a 10% vig on the winning side on a predicted trade. So tight spreads, narrow market, nice trading volume, and no caps. No wonder it's very, very supportive of those who choose to make gambling a living. Are you in London today? Is that where we're speaking to you from?
I'm actually in Somerset, which is in the southwest of England. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful there. And what can you tell us about coronavirus in London? Are you in lockdown, in quarantine, or?
We are in lockdown. We have been so for about 5 weeks. We don't know when it's going to finish. I would guess at least another 4 or 5. Everyone's in limbo, really. The numbers are coming down, at least. So it looks like we're sort of turned a corner. But it's a very worrying situation. And I think there's a general understanding that there'll be a second wave of it this winter. So maybe we'll start getting back to normal in a month or so, and then another lockdown in the winter.
We were looking at the numbers from the Johns Hopkins dashboard that everybody refers to on a regular basis. And in the UK, you've had 140,000 cases of the virus and 19,000 fatalities. And compared to the US, it's 844,000 cases and 47,000 fatalities. That's a difference of about 2.5 to 1, but our population is about 5 times as large as yours. So that it implies a little bit more of a dire scenario in the UK. How the citizen responded?
Well, see, we've also got to remember with all of these statistics in all the countries, we're not entirely sure how accurate they are, because we're not sure that people who die in elderly care homes, for example, are being counted properly. And then in terms of cases, only a very small number of the population is being tested. So
it's true.
It's very possible that 80% of the country might have had underlying conditions at some point,
So overall, and the reason I'm asking this, it's interesting to hear your perspective as to how Boris Johnson has fared during all this. Obviously, this is tough for any political leader in any country to be on top during a global pandemic. But what has been the reaction to Johnson's handling of the virus and the response?
Well, I think this is very pertinent with regards betting on the American election, because the government here, despite most journalists and experts being very critical of the way they've managed it and prepared for it, the government's approval ratings have gone through the roof. And even irrespective of Boris Johnson getting coronavirus himself, which obviously created a lot of public sympathy, his approval ratings shot up. Now, again, you can see that in Europe. You see it in lots of countries. In Italy, for example, that suffered terribly. The Prime Minister's approvals went up. And yet, in America, Trump is flatlining still. And if anything, those polls seem to be moving in the other direction because he does not have that ability to unify. He just doesn't have another gear, if you like. When Trump gives a press conference, he goes out attack. He has a fight with people. When at this moment in time, the clear strategy of any sensible leader is to try and unite the country, be serious, stick to the facts, and you'll generally get a kind of rally round the flag effect if you do that. And I think that Boris Johnson has had that. The Conservatives have had that. But I don't see that Trump is going to get any benefit out of it at all.
That's certainly a good observation. In fact, who was it, Mike, that one of our earlier guests that so correctly suggested when Trump was at 57 cents, he said it's time for a short. It'll go from 57 down to 47, and he nailed that 10 cents direction. Which guest was that?
Was that Jason Pipkin, I think?
It could have been Jason Pipkin or Derek Phillips, I think. One of those two absolutely nailed this. For the reason you just cited, Paul, is that, inevitably it's going to be tough to be on top to manage a crisis like this, but particularly if you're someone like Trump who doesn't have that other gear, that invariably he was going to succumb to some weakness in the polls. And that's certainly what we're seeing right now. We're going to take a short break in a moment. What we do is in every one of our episodes, we ask professional traders like yourself to share a tactic that you use on a regular basis or with a specific market that is how you make your investment and trading decisions and gambling decisions. So we're going to come right back after a short break, and you're going to share a tactic with us. All right, we're back with the tactics segment of the political trade. Our guest is Paul Krishnamurty. Paul, take us to school. What do you want to share with us today?
Yeah, so it's a tactic that I think can be generally applied to all political leadership contests or nominations, which is, I believe Americans call it, buy the rumour, sell the fact. When we look at a market, in this case, let's talk about the VP nomination. The market is wide open. There may be 20, 30 people in the betting. Yet, in reality, there are only 5, 7, at maximum 10 people in it. We could see it also in the Democrat race. There was still only ever 5 or 6 people who could win that. So the plan there would be identify long-term, identify your 4 or 5, maybe less, maybe more, maybe slightly more, people who you think will A, contest the thing, right? And then B, will be hyped up in the media, hyped up by other gamblers, gain some traction. And for example, one of those people that I've got my best position on that market is Elizabeth Warren at the moment. I got Elizabeth Warren at 5 a few weeks back. I thought she's obviously one of the contenders. And now this morning she's at 20 on Betfair. So the opportunity is there to sell back.
And in fact, Elizabeth Warren is having a strong day today. In fact, she's up 3 cents on the day to 16 cents, which is, I think that's a recent high over the last couple of days here. So she's definitely getting traction.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things have driven that. In that, firstly, her brother died of coronavirus today, so I think people are just drawing a relationship between the two things.
Right.
And secondly, there was a CNN graphic last night which had Democrat VP candidates in contention, and it had Warren, Whitmer, and Klobuchar. So people are drawing some conclusion that reflects some kind of inside information. I don't think it does, but I mean, she's an obvious candidate. She was an obvious heavyweight candidate all the way through it. And bearing in mind that if Biden's got a weakness he needs to win liberals over, she's perfect.
So is the tactic that you're defining identifying the shorter list of the probable main contenders and bet to the short list as opposed to trying to identify the actual VP nominee?
Yeah, absolutely. For the principal tactic is to just define the shortlist.
So why don't you build out the rest of your short list then as you have it? So you have a Warren position. Who else then, if you're betting to a short list and trying to identify 3 or 4 well-priced candidates, who else rounds out your short list right now?
Well, I backed Gretchen Whitmer at 10, and so that's gone down a little bit, but I'm still happy to have her in the shortlist. I think she's a fairly obvious one. I made a very small amount of money on Val Demings early on, got in and out, but then I lost that back, again trading backwards on Stacey Abrams, who I still think is shortlisted, but I haven't got a position on her. And having listened to your last show with the magnificent James Carville, who's just reinforced so many of my opinions, just brilliant to listen to him free-ranging, I had to get on Cortez Masto at 5 earlier because...
Oh, you had it at 5.
Yeah, she's just not known over here.
Yeah, she was 7 cents here and traded up to 9 cents over the last couple of days. And now she's come back down to 7 cents in current pricing. But she's got a little bit more wind behind her sail on our market than at yours if you have 5 cents. And Tammy Baldwin, you mentioned she's at 3 cents and Whitmer's at 8 cents. And Whitmer's down a little bit. I think Whitmer's been impacted perhaps a little bit by some of the controversy that she might have overreached a little bit on her lockdown restrictions. I think particularly the idea that if you own 2 homes, you could not drive from one to the other, or you could not use a motorboat, or you could not cut your own lawn. I think that might have brought some unnecessary attention to her, and I think that might be corresponding with seeing her come down a couple cents. But to go to review your short list, then again, you have Whitmer, Masto as a result of James Carville. In fact, Mike, do you have a clip of that?
I do.
But the long shot selection is Masto's. That's well priced at 7%. You want that.
At 7 cents?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at 7 cents, that's the biggest value I see.
So just to close out on this, and again, it's a great tactic. You're right, because you're not picking the ultimate winner here. You're picking the short list, which is basically the second round of voting, and you're looking for value. So that includes Elizabeth Warren, that includes Abrams as the candidate, Whitmer, Masto, and any other name.
No, they would be mine for now. I mean, I like Klobuchar. I think she's got a very solid chance, but I don't really think there's much value in the odds. And again, there is this question mark that what would Klobuchar add to the ticket, because she's basically a female version of Biden, right? She ticks all the same boxes, right? I know she perhaps would be better at getting these suburban women out than anyone else. I mean, funnily enough, I was very pro Klobuchar for the nomination. You know, she was always my best result.
Well, the notion of buying the rumor, selling the fact is an old capital markets adage for active traders, usually around earnings reports, that when the announcement comes out, that's the time to take the profit. And that's essentially what you're saying here. When a short list is announced, and one will be announced, there'll be 3 or 4 names, and that's when you would likely take your appreciation out and start focusing on a narrower outcome. So buy the rumor, sell the fact, bet to the VP shortlist. That's the tactic you shared with us. And we're going to come back right after a quick break. And then we're going to ask Paul for his perspective on some specific predicted markets. We'll be right back. But first...
Want a little more luck in your life? Get Luckbox, the control freak's guide to life, money, and probability. Named the best new magazine of 2019. Luckbox is a must-read for side hustlers, gamblers, entrepreneurs, and active investors. Each issue features best bets from prediction market experts, as well as timely sports wagering, stocks, options, futures, and cryptocurrency trading ideas. You can buy Luckbox on newsstands, but with this special offer, listeners of The Political Trade can receive a 10-issue digital subscription absolutely free. Just visit getluckbox.com to receive the award-winning magazine right in your inbox. Don't rely on luck. Get Luckbox for free today. Learn more at getluckbox.com.
Well, welcome back to the Political Trade. We have Paul Krishnamurty with us. He's coming to us live from the UK. He's an analyst with Betfair and a professional gambler. And he has a blog at politicalgambler.com where he shares some of his insights on everything from cricket, golf, and U.S. politics and snooker as well. But we're all about politics today. And in this trade section, Paul has 5 very specific trades that he wants to share with us. Paul, what is the first market that we should pull up?
This is next European leader out, and I backed Angela Merkel at 52.
Okay, so the next European leader out. Interestingly enough, a number of our guests have been speaking to this market. Currently, as you said, Merkel is trading at 52. She is the front runner in that market. Next is Conti at around 30 cents, and then Sanchez of Spain. And what this market is wagering on is who will be the next European leader that would leave their position. So Merkel is the second longest serving chancellor of Germany. She's really being well received in Germany right now for her efforts in leading her administration through the coronavirus response. She announced in late 2018 that she would not run again and that this term would be her last. So you think there's a high probability, in light of her announcement that she's leaving, the fact that she's only trading at 50 cents certainly sounds like a great value bet. What would you explain her not trading at a higher price right now? What do you think the reason for that would be?
The logic behind that is the uncertainty in countries, particularly Italy and Spain, because both Italy and Spain have very fragile coalition governments, and Italy particularly, the government, I think if you went back to the Second World War, the average length of an Italian government is like 15 months or something, right? So this stuff can happen, that they can collapse at any time. However, I would add there that Italy is having a terrible time with coronavirus, and Giuseppe Conte's approval ratings are up. And I don't think that Conte's coalition partners have any incentive whatsoever in bringing down the government in the short term, because the far right would probably get in, or could well get in. And so I think, first of all, what we're betting here is that the Italian government doesn't collapse during the middle of a coronavirus, which I would have thought is likely, and then that they give him at least a maximum of a year, 18 months, because Merkel will, I'm almost certain, be gone by next summer, by the end of next summer.
Yeah, so Merkel's been trading over the last 30 days in the trading range from 41 cents up to as high as 56 cents. But for the most part, in this range right now, it's 50 cents, an even money play. So that's your bet. Do you like this a lot in terms of Merkel?
I do, yeah. I would personally price that around 70.
Around 70. So there's lots of value here, trading at 50 cents. All right, let's move on to your second trade. I know you're going to move to U.S. politics now. Which market should we pull up?
This is Arizona for the Democrats in the general election.
So which party will win Arizona in 2020? The Democrats are trading at 57 cents right now. The Republicans are trading at 44 cents. What's your call there?
It dovetails with my general position on the election, which is I think the Democrats are going to win. I think Biden's going to win. I think it could win quite big. The thing here is that Arizona's priced roughly the same as many other swing states. So as Pennsylvania, for example, at the moment is roughly the same. Wisconsin, Michigan. I would have thought that I think that they've got as good a chance there as they have in any of those states. I think that they could. There's a definite route that the Democrats could win Arizona and yet Trump still win the election. They won the Senate race there. The Senate race, the polls for the Senate race next year are heavily pro-Democrat now.
Yeah, the Republicans did win Arizona, or Trump won Arizona in 2016. He had 48% of the vote. Clinton had 44.6%, and turnout was at 77% of all registered voters. The last 538 poll puts Biden ahead, by 9 points in that state, and
Mm,
the market seems to be trending in the direction that favors your trade. Over the last 30 days, the Democrats have traded to a new high. It's been as low as 49 cents up to the high price now, which is 57 cents. So your call is that the Democrats will take Arizona in the 2020 presidential election?
absolutely.
That's your bet. We'll move on to the next one. Your third trade, I believe you're moving all the way to the east, up to the state of Maine. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. Democrats to take Maine Senate to get rid of Susan Collins.
Okay, well, Susan Collins is, of course, the Republican incumbent. She's been there since 1997, been highly visible as a swing voter on a number of primary important issues, so including the Kavanaugh hearings and some other major legislation as well. She's going up against Democrat Sarah Gideon, who's been a member of the Maine House since 2012 and has served as the Speaker since 2016. And Gideon was leading Collins in a public policy polling poll just last month with a 4-point lead. The Democrats have a 67-cent price to win the U.S. Senate election in Maine. And you think that's a good buy and a good value?
I think it's a certainty. I think her numbers are terrible. Susan Collins' numbers are terrible. I think I saw 37% favourability last week. And the thing is that the position she's taken, this kind of swing vote position, as you say, on Kavanaugh or on the impeachment hearings, on witnesses and evidence of the impeachments, is there any market for that position in American politics? Sitting on the
No.
fence over Trump.
It's really, well, sitting on the fence anywhere, actually. It's such a good point that makes you so vulnerable during general elections. And it's such a good point that when you don't have a core constituency behind you, that really puts you in a no man's land politically. I think you've talked me into that trade as well. I agree with you. I think it's very attractive. All right, so that's your third trade for us, and the fourth trade, I guess, is a summary of your last two. You just spoke to a couple of Senate races here, and the fourth market you said you wanted to talk about was which party will control the Senate after the 2020 election. And of course, the Dems need to win 4 seats that are now held by the Republicans without losing any that they are currently defending. The Democrats in that market are trading at 43 cents to take control. The Republicans are the yes is 59 cents. So you like the Democrats. There's a little bit of value there at 43 cents.
Absolutely. And again, of course, this would also win if they win the presidency and it's a tie on 50-50, right? And the vice president holds a balance of power. I like Maine a lot, as we've just said. I like Arizona a lot. Colorado's got to be good every chance. And I like Steve Bullock in Montana as well. And what's really turned this for me again is Carville. Carville has really put me on this. I liked it anyway, but maybe I don't have the knowledge of some of these lesser races.
So that's that leads us to the fourth, your final pick for the fifth race, and that is the U.S. presidential election. I know you have a strong feeling there. So what's your call? Donald Trump is currently sitting at 50 cents. Joe Biden at 44 cents.
I am strongly Joe Biden at 44. I have been adamant since 2016 that the betting for the presidential election is wrong. Trump should not be favourite. I don't understand any of the logic in him being favourite. First point is Biden is underpriced because there is this silly idea that they're going to get rid of him at some brokered convention, and I just don't buy that for a minute. But, we've got 5 years worth of Trump-Biden polls dating back to when people were saying he was going to jump into 2016 race. And Biden invariably leads these polls by double digits. It's only fallen back in recent months because the Democrat primary has divided it to some extent, and there's doubt from the Bernie supporters, liberals. I think most of those people will come back on board. We've seen numerous polls, for example, the exit poll on the night of the midterm, the Blue Wave night. I think they said 53 or 54% would definitely vote against Trump. And we're seeing this in very consistent, entrenched numbers. Trump is going to get somewhere between 44 and 47% maximum.
As you recall, the James Carville shared his magic number with us, which was 44.5%. So to your point, every single poll that's posted at 538 puts Biden ahead of Trump. Perhaps only by a single digits in each case, but that's been every single poll. And we've had some transparency into your fifth pick, but because your blog post over at politicalgambler.com, which you titled U.S. Election, 4 Worrying Signals for Donald Trump, listed these 4 reasons: that his bad polling position seems to be worsening. Wisconsin victory bodes well for Democrats. It's something, of course, that Carville spoke about as well. Obama joins the campaign trail, and that has not been priced into the market, that's for sure. You get the remnants of the Obama coalition back on board, and that potentially is game changing. And Deutsche Bank and Russia scandals are not over, they're not finished. And the potential for Trump as a walking scandal is never over. So there are 4 strong reasons that you have that back this position. Is it a position to buy and hold right now? Are you trading in that market?
I'm buying and holding it. I think the market's wrong. I just think it's completely wrong and irrational. And I've been saying it was irrational for ages. And the fact that he's still favourite, despite terrible polls. I mean, look at the polls yesterday that came out. 8% down in Michigan, 8% down in Pennsylvania, even 4% in Florida. He's got to win Florida. There's absolutely no way he's winning again without Florida. There's no reason to think that the trends at the midterms where the suburbs have turned, because again, this is why we got it wrong in 2016, isn't it? I personally, and I think Clinton has written this herself, did not believe that I thought she would do better amongst white suburban women. And ever since 2016, that trend that we expected has been confirmed. For whatever reason, Clinton failed to get them. You've got other things, like there's an NBC poll the other day showing a 7% swing amongst seniors. And you just think, where does Trump win? How does he win? Where are these extra Trump voters going to come from that he needs? Because again, 46 point, even if he does better than Carville's saying, and he gets 46.1% again, is that enough? Are we going to really get a third party split like we saw in 2016? I don't see that.
So you make a strong case, and that's what we were looking for, was a unique perspective from the other side of the pond. So Paul, thank you so much for that. We want you to stick around, but I want to remind our listeners too, if you want to take advantage of some of the trades that were discussed on this show, you are in luck, because you can take advantage of the tactics, the trades that our Super Trader guests share by simply going to predictit.org/promo/TPT20. Sign up, deposit $20. We'll match that first $20 you deposited. And that's at predictit.org/promo/TPT20. Deposit 20, you'll have 40 to trade with. It's that simple. Don't just listen to the political trade. You can sign up and trade along. Of course, that doesn't apply to you, Paul, because UK residents are restricted from being able to trade on PredictIt.
Yes, sadly not. This is what we need. We need a global betting exchange, don't we? We need to get over these legislative barriers and have a proper global market.
Well, from your lips to the CFTC's ears, who is currently offering the exemption letter that allows PredictIt to work. Well, we are going to take a quick break, but I want you to stick around, Paul, because we're going to name our Luckbox of the week coming up right after this short break. And I think it'll be of particular interest to you based on one of your trading selections. Well, welcome back. We are entering our last segment of the episode with our special guest, Paul Krishnamurty from the UK, where we're going to name our Luckbox of the week. Of course, a Luckbox is an undeserving recipient of a favorable outlier outcome. It's a term that gamblers and poker players know. I know, Paul, you know that term as well. Our Luckbox of the week is Joe Biden. And if you wonder why, then either you have a very short-term memory or you suffer from some sort of hyper-partisan disorder. Joe Biden first ran as a Democratic candidate for president in 1988. That's over 30 years ago. And then again in 2008. and is now the presumptive Democratic nominee for 2020. Out of the gate, Biden failed to generate much enthusiasm. The media loved Warren, the youth loved Sanders, Wall Street liked Bloomberg, but nobody loved Joe. On February 3rd, Biden came in fourth in the Iowa caucus with 14% of the vote. The following week, he came in fifth in the New Hampshire primary with only 8% of the vote. Biden's candidacy was practically left for dead at that point. On February 11th, only 75 days ago, Biden hit a low of 7 cents in the prediction markets at PredictIt.org, suggesting a 7% probability of securing the Democratic nomination. But a political rescue in the way of an 11th hour endorsement by South Carolina Rep. Jim Clyburn, the third ranking Democrat in the House, brought out the African American vote in South Carolina and throughout the South. Even James Carville, on our last episode, called Clyburn's support perhaps the most significant presidential endorsement ever. It took Joe Biden 32 years to win his first presidential primary, the 2020 South Carolina contest. On Super Tuesday, he also won 9 more states. He is now the presumptive nominee. But was Biden the best possible choice? Probably not. Was he the best choice we had? Damn right. Not my words, but the words of James Carville speaking about Biden to Vox on March 6th. But as you've heard Carville in the last episode, he and the rest of the Democratic establishment are now rallying around the candidate. A recent ABC Washington poll found enthusiasm for Joe's candidacy was pretty lackluster. Just 24% of his supporters said they were very enthusiastic about supporting him. That's the lowest level of enthusiasm for a Democratic presidential candidate that the polls had found in the last 20 years. But the coronavirus has eliminated Trump's Trump card, which is a roaring economy. Throw in Trump's impeachment, narcissism fatigue, even among Trump's most loyal supporters, the coronavirus chaos, including a mounting pandemic death toll, record unemployment, a pending recession, and you have Joe Biden on top of one of the most remarkable political comebacks in history. And despite his age, being the oldest presidential nominee in history, Biden will turn 78 in just a few weeks after Election Day. Despite that, and despite record low enthusiasm for Joe's candidacy, a recent NBC News Wall Street Journal poll has Biden leading Trump nationally by 7 points among all registered voters, 49 to 42%. So, Joe, you are the Luckbox of the week. Perhaps you're the Luckbox of the millennium when it comes to politics. And I know that probably sits well with your position, but what do you think, Paul, about our Luckbox selection this week?
It's music to my ears. I could not agree more. I mean, he that market was amazing for me because I was not doing anything right on that market. I wasn't in a terror. I was going to lose, but I was relying on Warren or Klobuchar for lots, and it was just not happening. They just couldn't quite make the thing, and I never rated Biden at all from the start. I wrote repeatedly that Biden wouldn't win, and then I just timed the comeback perfectly. It suddenly was just in front of my face. Why is he 6% when he's going to win South Carolina? And then I just read about Clyburn. I read that Clyburn was liable to endorse someone on the Thursday, right? And it was obviously going to be Biden. So I predicted it to widely at 6%, got on quite heavily, and within about 5 days, everything had turned good.
That's a fantastic
it was the most amazing
trade.
few days.
All right. Well, actually, maybe then we should be naming you the Luckbox of the week if you picked up Biden at 6 cents. That's a fantastic trade, and you're right. All that information was right in front of us. We knew South Carolina was going to be his firewall state, and Clyburn's announcement was going to be coming, that endorsement. So what a great trade. Well, you're set up to have a great year, and we really enjoyed having you on, and we'd like to have you on before the general elections again to get an updated perspective from across the pond.
I'd love to.
Paul, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Well, terrific. Mike, do you have any announcements before we sign off today?
Yeah, just one, Jeff. We're still running our special promotion for a print copy of Luckbox magazine. It's real simple, real easy to do. All you have to do is go to either Google Play or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and write us a quick review for the political trade. Write a review, send it to us at tpt@luckboxmagazine.com, and then we'll get back to you, ask for a mailing address, and we'll send out a free copy of Luckbox Magazine in print.
It's one of the few ways to get Luckbox Magazine right now, because we had to pull back on newsstand distribution because there is no newsstand distribution for this issue. Yet this issue and every issue has extensive articles on the political prediction markets, including some trade selections by some of our active traders and some of our prior guests on this show. So that's a great way to get Luckbox Magazine, absolutely free. It's a $7.99 on newsstands, but we'll send it to anyone who sends us a copy of their review. So thanks for that, Mike. And that's it. I think we're going to wrap up. It was great having Paul on, and we got to call it a day. This is Jeff Joseph.
And I'm Mike Reddy.
And remember to wash your hands and social distance and stay healthy. And join us again next week on The Political Trade.